Good day everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the video. Today I'd like to have a good yap about the Warhammer 40k Space Marine Master Crafted Edition that came out on the 10th of June there. Because I recently noticed that it was on Game Pass when I didn't know it was going to be on there, so just decided to download it, load it up, heard it had 4K support now. Didn't really look too much into the announcement of it at the time. It was a cool thing. Game definitely deserves a little bit of love. Sort of like a bit of a remaster like that for sure, especially with Space Marine 2 doing so well. I decided to download it, jump into it. I had played the original back in the day. I played it on PS3 at the time, so quite a while ago. So I don't remember too much detail about the game, but I remember loading this one up and thinking like, wow, yeah, this looks fine. Looks good. Went and had a look at some gameplay footage of the older one just to compare, and the texture work is definitely really nice. But I did notice a few things, and then that got me curious. I had a look at the Steam version just to sort of see what price it was selling for, and noticed that it was £35 or $40, and that on Steam it was sitting at mostly negative. So I decided to have a look into things, and yeah, This game is definitely not worth the price they're asking for it. There's a ton of reports of performance issues that I'm seeing. A lot of people talking about how the game is just jittering and stuttering a lot, and just frame rate, GPU bound scenarios, and just all sorts, just weird stuff that should not be happening with a game that old. Especially when, as far as I know, the PC version released in quite a good state back in the day for this game. There's a couple other things, so just beyond the performance issues, there's also a quote-unquote modernized UI. Now, the modern UI in the main menu and the settings screen and stuff is a little bit it's a bit shit, let's be honest, a bit shit. Especially when you look at the original's menus and it's wow, this is, quite fun, this is quite stylized. It's not overly, it's not nothing too crazy, but it's why would you change that? It's just one of those things. It's why take a step back in that regard? This modern UI just doesn't sell the idea that I am playing a Warhammer game, whereas the old one at least had a little bit of that flair to it. Now, when you actually get into the game, I actually do quite like some of the more modernized UI, especially the health bar and the Ultramarine logo for your rage meter and stuff. I think that's a little bit nicer, the way that's all laid out. But then you have stuff like the ammo counter in the bottom right looks way worse, compared to the old one. The old one had a little bit of life to it, a little bit of flair, a little bit of character. And the new one just looks like every game that has a gun in it, today. So, not a fan of the modern UI for the most part, although there's a couple of little parts of it that I'm okay, yeah, I can understand that, it's a good decision. Now, one of the big ones was that they didn't add an FOV slider, which I feel if you're paying £35, $40 for this, I would expect some new graphic options. Modern day graphic, quality of life options, video settings, sorry, not graphic, but video settings. And to not see that there is quite annoying, especially when I do feel the game does have a bit more of a constrained FOV. Now, for a third-person action game, or third-person shooter, the way this one is, it's not as big a deal as this would have been if this was a first-person game, but at the same time, I'm paying this amount of money. If you're paying this amount of money, I didn't personally, I played it on Game Pass, but if you are paying £35, $40 for this, I would expect some modern quality of life video settings like that, Especially when, like I said, the FOV is quite constrained, so if you're playing on a monitor, it could be a little bit tight on that regard. And like I said, for the price, I would expect basically no performance issues. The UI to be, although this is obviously going to be to personal taste, the whole UI thing, but me personally, it was you had it figured out back then the way it was. Why change it? Not sure what's happened with that one. And then, like I said, the FOV slider would definitely be a big one for that sort of thing. Now, don't get me wrong, it is not all bad. The new texture work is really nice. Went and had a look, compared some of the stuff. Didn't look into too much detail, just looked at some gameplay footage and then looked back at my game, looked at the video that I was watching for the old gameplay, and it was wow, these new textures are actually quite nice. The new 4K support is very nice because I've recently jumped up to 4K myself, so being able to launch this game and see it in 4K is really, really nice. There's also a new control scheme. It's like sort of a modernized control scheme. Personally, I don't have any issues with it, although that's going to be to personal taste and whether you like the one beforehand. That's actually another part of the downsides is that there's no rebindable controls for controller. There is rebindable keyboard keys, but no controller rebindability, which I feel like would have solved that issue. You know, just let players rebind their own buttons, and then you don't have to worry about that at all. So I don't know why that was something that they didn't add as well. Again, it's one of those things that a lot of these issues that I'm listing, it's like, for the price, this is a problem. You know, if this was like a £10 upgrade for people that owned the original, fine. You know, I'm not expecting a free upgrade because these things, to bring things up to 4K, they bring in new textures. That does require work on the part of people to do that. So I don't mind, you know, obviously throwing a few quid toward an upgrade. But if this was like £10 upgrade for people who own the original and maybe £20 at most for people that didn't own it and this is the first time like buying it, then I feel like that would have softened the blow of a lot of the stuff, and I think that would have been mostly fine. You know, obviously there's a few like, you know, maybe the modern UI, you know, like very personal stuff, but stuff like the no, you know, FOV, performance issues is the big one. But essentially this is £35, $40 for a 4K texture upgrade that removes some sort of bit of character from the game, I would say. So I can't really recommend it. I can't say I would say it's not worth it at the current price. This is definitely like, you know, wait for sale, and it feels like a big misstep. I know this game wasn't entirely made by Relic, or the remaster crafted edition, the remaster wasn't entirely made by Relic, so maybe the team that they had working on it were on like a strict deadline and it had to be out by a certain time, and they just didn't have time to like go in and redo the UI for 4K, so they just, you know, slapped the modern one on there because that's just what works, and you know, it's easier to implement, sort of thing. So maybe these things are happening, but if that is the case, then they should have lowered the price, in my opinion. Now, if you're on Game Pass, then you're laughing because you're already on Game Pass. You're probably playing a bunch of other games, and now you've just got the Mastercrafted edition on there, and you basically just get a nicer looking Warhammer 40k Space Marine. So not too bad in that regard if you're on Game Pass. Like I said, it's the price. It's not the, because for me personally, I didn't have any of the performance issues. I was able to load it up 4K. Game ran fine. The FOV slider was just a smidge of an issue. I would have liked it if I could have expanded it just a wee bit more, but not a huge deal in third-person games, like I said. Yeah, I wish they would have lowered the price. I hope they lower the price here just to sort of match what is given in this package here. But that's really about it. Just wanted to make a quick video saying that, yeah, don't recommend it for the price that it's currently going. Unless you're on Game Pass, then, you know, check it out, see for yourself, sort of thing. If you can get one of those, like, you know, ridiculous Game Pass deals where it's like only £1 for 2 weeks or something, you know, pick it up, play it then. But yeah, just wouldn't recommend it, sadly to say, unfortunately, because the original was an absolute ton of fun and deserves a modern remaster that really lets it sort of breathe new life into it again, especially with Space Marine 2 popping off so well. But yeah, thanks for watching. That's my thoughts on the matter. Catch you on the next video.